So,
Yeah, you and I can have a long conversation about that one day, too.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Now, live from Chicago, the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass.
Hal Sparks, actor, comedian, and multimedia personality.
And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Hal Sparks.
All right, let's do this.
Welcome to the show. Sorry, no news today. We got nothing to cover. There's no giant protests across the country that dwarf any possible response to Donald Trump's silly inflatable tank parade, the ego parade that he's planning for Flag Day / his birthday. There is
there's
breaking
no weird
news.
assassination attempts.
Yeah, well, and arguably successful ones. It's breaking this morning that there have been two Minneapolis state lawmakers and their spouses have been shot this morning. The No Kings protest in Minneapolis has been canceled because of these targeted shootings. The story about this, by the way, that breaking was that apparently this person was dressed as a police officer. Right. It is hard to make out whether or not that is the case, and if it wasn't just somebody in body armor seen leaving the house, and the assumption was that they were law enforcement because the shootings had happened, up the street. People thought they were maybe checking on a lawmaker down the street, that kind of thing, and so they assumed anybody wearing body armor must be a police officer. So whether that person was actively pretending to be a cop, we don't know. But they are still at large. 2 Democratic lawmakers were shot in separate incidents at their homes in suburban Minnesota by a gunman dressed like a cop. This is the story as Daily Beast is selling it on early Saturday morning. Melissa Hortmer and her husband were shot at their home in Brooklyn Park. They both died. And then he went and shot State Senator John Hoffman and his wife. They were shot in just like north of Minneapolis in their home. They're still alive. They're expected to recover, but they're cautiously optimistic about it. But the gunman who was wearing body armor is now on the loose. They're looking for him. There's a massive police presence out there looking for him. He is on foot, apparently, because he abandoned his vehicle. Apparently, they found his car at the scene with a manifesto in it. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety said that we will share information soon. This is happening, sort of all morning long. Tim Waltz has posted, I've been briefed this morning on an ongoing situation involving shootings in Champlain and Brooklyn Park. The Minnesota Department of Public Safety and local law enforcement are on the scene. We'll share more information soon. That was directly from him. He's activated the State Emergency Operations Center. Local law enforcement in Champlain and Brooklyn Park have the full resources of the state of Minnesota behind them. And Waltz says, we are monitoring the situation closely and we'll share more information. They're just keeping everybody up to date. And the mayor posted that, similarly. Zach Limbs, I never thought we'd be here. My prayers are with Hortman and Hoffman families. I hope everyone comes out of this okay. I can't emphasize this enough. That is not okay. Okay, any type of violence against elected officials is not okay. Any type of violence against other people is not okay. My understanding is that someone cosplaying as an officer, this is early information, so this is always the slippery part. And they haven't been caught. For those going out to protest today, please do it safely. They ended up canceling the protest today for the safety of everyone because there's the idea that this person would embed themselves in this and do something awful is fairly high, I think. And until they catch that person, it's just not advisable. I'm planning on going with Summer to one of the No Kings protest here in Las Vegas downtown, but it's later in the afternoon. And we will keep abreast of that situation, but it's this is one of those things where it's an example of when the news starts dealing with something like this that just broke, and there's so much we can't know, and people have a tendency to just kind of get out over their skis on the details of it, and ultimately, if there was something to be gained by people just kind of postulating on it from this far away, where we would all go, oh wait, I know where he is. I know that guy. He's staying at this house, right? That would be one thing, but it never reaches that. It tends to be just a lot of people postulating on something awful. And then when the actual information comes in, then you can garner something. There's a lesson to be learned. It will be when it resolves in some way. But the one valuable aspect of this that is worth saying is that if you're in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, might be a good time to stay indoors and keep an eye out, be extra vigilant. And, I don't know that this guy seems to be very targeted towards Dem lawmakers at this point so far. That doesn't mean he's not moving on to other people. That doesn't mean there's not another threat. So just be safe, be vigilant, keep your eyes open, and if you see something, say something in the current time, because the faster this is resolved, the faster people can go back to, maybe the No Kings protest today could be saved if he's captured early, and it could still happen. So that I think is the only valuable thing that can come from this, is that people know that this is an active situation, that they stay clear of those areas and stay vigilant and protect themselves. It's really the only valuable thing I think the news can give you in this situation ever. The rest of it is just postulating on what he's doing now. And again, they've already found his car, and allegedly there's a manifesto in there. So his motive answers don't need to be speculated upon. He wrote them down. So we'll know soon enough, one way or another. So, trying to get out ahead of, I think it's probably this or it might be this, is just unhealthy, I think. And Lord knows we have enough other news to cover that actually affects maybe your plans for voting, maybe your plans for activism, maybe your plans of whether or not to show up at a No Kings protest. And so we'll keep at that as well, but we'll keep you abreast of this. There's this spectrum of news that's happening over the last week that goes from the sort of petty to the extraordinary. This, as a week in news, this was a Whitman sampler of all levels of news, and from the sublime to the ridiculous. The idea that Trump wrote an executive order eliminating California's clean air rules, which he can't do. They actually have a cutout in the law that allows them to, because they had particularly bad smog because of, guess what, cars. And so they were allowed to have more control over their emission standards than other states because of the enormity of the problem. And so that law still stands. And so his executive order will get fought in court and more than likely lose, but it's very performative for the people that voted him in, that hate California and want to get back at Gavin Newsom by giving a bunch of people in the valley asthma. And meanwhile, we of course know that on the 61st day of Trump's 60-day red line, where he has been saying the whole time, if Iran can either not get a nuclear weapon, if they keep trying, something terrible will happen. And his elbowing and whispering with Netanyahu over the last few months, this kind of marginal plausible deniability he's been selling to the rest of the world, popped off on Thursday, 3 hours after the IAEA released a report that said Tehran is not only increasing their not allowing inspections of their centrifuges and their nuclear sites, but they are increasing it. Right after that, Iran said, yeah, we're not only increasing it, we're opening up a whole new site to make weapons-grade uranium. 3 hours later, the strikes occurred. This is of no surprise to anyone. The biggest news of it, as far as the American voter is concerned, as far as I can see, is the schism it has created between Republicans. In the world of MAGA, there is a minor civil war going on from the anti-interventionist, isolationist wing of the maggot world, who think that, all wars are created equal, all skirmishes are created equal, and not only should we not help Ukraine, but we shouldn't be part of UN groups that keep the peace in Sudan and places like that. We shouldn't stop civil wars. We should just let these people fight it out and then make friends with the winner. That's essentially what I mean, honestly, I don't get anywhere that these folks are like, we just, this Trump idea, we just want the death to stop, is nonsense. That's him picking, they used to bug Obama about picking winners and losers when it came to businesses. Well, this is picking winners and losers. They have decided ahead of time. Trump has decided, as has Marjorie Taylor Greene and others, that they want Russia to win. So this war has to end when Russia is on the upside or controls this territory, instead of them losing over the next year and a half and being driven out of the country entirely and upending the entire economy, because there goes MTG's nest egg for her, future political TV network or whatever she's going to do. That Russian money dries up really quick. So right. So we have, you've got this one group that allegedly is the peacenik group, headed by sort of the MTGs and Donald Trump's illusion that we just want peace in the world, or Vance selling this idea that he's the peace president, which we all know is nonsense. Nobody who's the peace president says anything like Trump Plaza Gaza, or refers to the Gazans as a cancer and a problem you have to deal with quickly, right? That is not the language of peace. That is the language of zero rules of engagement and zero limitations on civilian casualties. That's what that is. That's what that language is about. The other half, though, the rhinos, the people that they're at war with, are the relatively stable, although I think by most, late 90s, early 2000s measure, awful Republicans of the old guard, who are just, kind of almost, it's almost sweet how awful they are, compared to the current awful. You know what I mean? It's like, remember when we just had that little bit of awful, when they were just sexist.
Remember the Tea Party?
Right. Yeah. Adorably awful. Yeah. When they were all just sexist, egotistical, lying, hypocritical bigots, that they were all, that was just who ran on the hashtag family values, right? That seems downright quaint by comparison to the modern skeevy crowd of angry maggots we have running around screaming for authoritarianism, so much so that we ended up with the rallies that we're having is a no kings rally. That is the concern. That's a legit concern with the building of an administrative state that overrides the SCOTUS, that overrides the House and Senate, has the final word on everything, that the bills, arguably, if you asked most of those of the maggoty Republicans and the people in Trump world, they think the president should draft the bill he wants, and the House and Senate should just pass it because he said so. Which is, they literally, this is not an exaggeration. This is literally how he thinks it should go. He shouldn't have to go to the Senate and the House and make them create a bill he can sign. He should just draft one, send it over, and they'll sign it. Now, where does this come from besides being, a fever dream of how he could run the world? I'll tell you after the break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide.
I knew there'd be a reason to come back after the break.
There should be, not the least of which is 100% more Johnny Million. We'll be back. That was a very high-pitched me. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah. There's so much of this stuff. Hold on, and I'm gonna open I need to have a window. Let's see. I know what I'll do.
You're back in 20 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
20 seconds?
Yeah. There's short breaks.
Short break.
Hardly time to do nothing.
Well, you did plenty of it, so don't worry.
I did plenty of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
So on the rhino side of things, there, to recap, the maggoty world thinks we should be out of it because they're certain that if we just stayed out of it, the strong man in the circumstance would win, and we could be buddies with them, no matter who they are, no matter who many, no matter who they enslave, no matter how many people they kill. It's better to be on. Might makes right. That's why, Trump is so impressed by Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, and which, by the way, Johnny, remind me to talk about Xi Jinping and the fact that he'll probably not be in power. If he makes it to September, it will be a miracle.
Oh, wow.
But Vladimir Putin, there's a reason why he thinks, okay, that's the way you do it, because those people stay in power for decades. That's the main thing. Like, okay, what do I want to do? I want to stay in power forever. How do they do it? They run everything. The issue, though, is not that they run everything, is that there is no structure under them that keeps them from running everything, that keeps them from running forever. We specifically designed our system, like the American system, not just in the Constitution, but over the years, to protect against people like this. As much as FDR was popular, people were like, yeah, we can't just have the same guy in there for decades. We're going to end up like a lot of these other countries, because we might like this guy, but the next guy might be horrifying, and we won't be able to get him out, and he'll get entrenched. And they were still counting paper ballots back then, in buckets, so they were fairly concerned, rightly so, that we would end up like countries that had people like Stalin and Lenin and people who stayed in there and created this on the real Republican side, the non-maggot Republicans, who are kowtowed and afraid, who are somewhere between biding their time, going like Trump will pass like a fever, but in the meantime, we've got to give them the maggots ginger ale and pat their forehead and read them The Princess Bride until they go to sleep. And they seem to think that, like the Tea Party and that thing, it will just phase through. Mary in the chat room knows what I'm talking about with Xi Jinping. But and by the way, if you want, we're live streaming at infotainmentwars.com, or you can go to @infotainmentwars on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get our subscribers up, so I think we can get 50 subscribers today. I'm pretty sure we can do that, right? So there is
Easily,
for all practical purposes, a civil war happening in the world of MAGA, and I believe that it is our responsibility as Democrats to stick a crowbar in that gap and wiggle it back and forth at every opportunity that we have.
Yeah.
And in many ways, we'll talk about the big beautiful bill today as well, because it's wonderfully boring and incredibly indicative of the hypocrisy of the modern Republican movement. There are not 12 little bills where they're dividing programs up and creating a budget where you can, we should just vote on these programs by themselves so they stand and fall on their own merits, right? Remember that talk? Remember that whole thing? Uh-huh. Before we got the big split bill last year that Mike Johnson's still catching hell for. Well, they've just blown past that. Not 12 bills, not 2 bills, 1 bill. That's where they're going, right? Which is a total middle finger to all of their voters who bought into this BS, that somehow these are the folks that will go through line by line. Then Doge comes in, $2 trillion in cuts, down to $1 trillion. Now $170 billion, most of which, if you look at their website, is crap. Either stuff that is already stopped, they're not spending on it anymore. The contract ended, or the program has a sunset date and the money's already been allocated, so it was already out the door anyways and it's not coming back. Or it's just programs they hate, and they cut programs they hate, which isn't waste, fraud, or abuse.
it seems to be mostly that.
Yeah, exactly. So the idea that these folks actually, all of this, I'm just saying that Trump is suffering from shrinkage, clearly. Apparently he's been taking Ozempic and injecting it straight into his crotch. Because
no.
So the whole thing is just withering right before us. There's an article in Daily Beast today that says 8 chaotic days shake Trump's grip on the presidency. And you hate to see it, but this is an example of all of it coming home to roost. This is an example of Trump. These are all fires that Trump set himself. These are all wicks he lit, either knowingly or unknowingly, that are grinding towards their explosive conclusion. I would argue, including the Iran situation, because we had a deal and it was working, and we could have extended it and increased opportunities for trade and social exchange with the Iranians, and maybe slowly but surely eke them out of this kind of Bronze Age BS they've been suffocated by the Ayatollah over time without needing to strafe bomb any places.
Yeah.
But Donald Trump came in and in his first term got rid of the Iran deal. Where are we now? Got rid of the cops program that brooms bad cops from local situations, local sheriff's departments and stuff, where they had a difficulty removing those folks because of union rules and all kinds of other stuff. The cops program gave them more rights and abilities to get rid of those folks, and he stripped it away. And 2 years to the day, almost, we had the George Floyd Chauvin incident in Minneapolis. 2 years to the day. By the way, and we had that at the same time we had COVID, after he had 2 years to the day stripped out the pandemic response team, kicked them out. Yep. And this is indicative, I want to say, there is a belief system everywhere that's become normal. And I sometimes refer to it as Rebel Incorporated, where it has become like hip to shake your fist at the man when you have no idea what the man is in this situation, right? You're like, it's almost like you're just mad that there's a line at Starbucks without recognizing that without a line, it would be chaos. There would be, mochas and lattes and fraps flying everywhere, and people, grabbing fistfuls of those protein bars that look like they were pooped out of a machine. The blondie ones, they just look like they were sliced off. We're not going to try to make this look like a candy bar anymore. We just can't be bothered, right? Those things, they'd be flying everywhere, because you do need, in a civil society, some sense of order. You do need due process. You need processes for a civilization. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. And maybe I'm particularly keyed up about this because I went to the DMV last week, and it was fine. The night before, I had to sign on and get an appointment because they don't take walk-ins, which is good. They've handled it that way. You get an appointment, you come in at your assigned time. I was there about 2 hours all total. It was about 30 minutes before they saw me because they were rotating through, because they want you to be there. Your appointment time is, when most people will be late for. So they're smart enough to know that the average person will be about 30 minutes late for most things when it's something like this, because if you have to be at the DMV, you probably had a lot of other stuff going on in your life as well. So you're a half hour there. Your number comes up. It's the last 4 digits of your phone number and your name pops up on the screen. They don't have to hand you anything anymore. You go to one of the booths. They run you through the stuff. You give them your paperwork. They, in my case, because I'm a strange person, they run it by a supervisor, and then they send you over to get your picture taken. You stand in line for that.
Really? Did they pull you out of line for that?
No, they didn't pull me out of line. I was sitting there, and they just had to come over and go, "Oh yeah, this guy. Okay, cool." There's a little thing though. If you have a famous name or a famous sounding name, it literally will flag. Sometimes you go, "Is somebody impersonating? Is somebody trying to get an ID in another state as this person or whatever?" It will come up, and nope, that's the real one, right? So, CSL says it took mine's 1.5 months out. What you do is you call, you sign on Tuesdays after 8 p.m. and you can get an appointment for the next Wednesday. So Tuesday night, CSL, go onto this website and get a new appointment for the next day. Yeah, you'll be in line, but it'll happen. Point being, I got Fat J. Fat J was my guy. That was literally his name. I was like, "What's your name?" He said, "Jay, you can call me Fat J." And I was like, "I will call you Fat J if you want to be called Fat J." And Fat J couldn't have been nicer, was totally professional, was dealing with a lot of complicated stuff because it's real ID and they want to make sure that you are who you say you are and all this stuff. And this is going to be the thing that allows me to get into federal buildings, allows me to get on airplanes. You
call me Fat J, by the way.
I would not. I would call you, you're not Beanpole Jackson, because you're the J works.
I wish I were Beanpole. I'm Dad Bod Jackson.
Oh, that's sweet. You're huggable. I will give you that. So, but this is the thing. How then Secrets, Fat J hit me up. Yeah. So Fat J was very nice. And Fat J sent me over to get my picture taken. And I went to the lady who was helping the other ladies with their hair. And I was like, "How's my hair look?" And she goes, "It looks terrific," whatever. Pull it, make sure it's out of your face right there. And I was like, "Thank you very much." And they took my picture and I was gone. It was a very well-run situation with very complex issues. You want to know that when somebody holds an ID up and gets on an airplane, they are who they say they are. And that's not easy. right? That is not. That's a complicated thing when somebody just walks in with a bunch of
not
paper.
the early 80s anymore.
Right.
This is, I mean, get on a wing and a prayer.
Yes. And not only was it, considering the depth of the importance of what was going on, very efficient, highly functional, and with a lot of people speaking multiple languages, obviously because it's Nevada. It struck me as like I was offended on behalf of these Fat J, everybody at the Nevada DMV, who are clearly busting their butts. Like it's a turnover, man. They don't get a break really. You know, probably every 3 hours they'll get a break and then they have a lunch and stuff like that. But there's just person after person after person after person with like stacks of paper proving who they are and all this kind of stuff. And you know, having to take tests, not eye tests, not
poor Fat J.
It's a lot. Yeah, Fat J does a lot of work. So I was offended on behalf of Fat J of all these people who go, you know, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you, are the scariest 11 words ever said, right? And when you run on that, we know the Republicans' motto is, you know, government can't do anything right. Elect me and I'll prove it. But there's a lot of people out there who also just have no respect for the process. The reason the big bill is big is because they're trying to beat, you know, they have to beat back all the loophole lawyers who will find a way around all the tax law and find a way to never pay taxes. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We're right on time.
I tried. It should turn 30 right as I do it, but I was a little late. I don't have a second counter on my clock, though. I probably should. Is that a possibility? Hold on. Of course it is. I'm driving myself crazy. Yeah.
Another short break, 20 seconds.
Thank you.
Your love is driving me crazy.
Quick. Okay, thank you, CSL. We a car match and a realistic badge. The independent officials say the suspect drove a squad-like SUV with emergency lights. Inside, they found a manifesto naming multiple lawmakers.
You're locked into the House Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Thanks for that. So, Can't Stop Lying and Andrea, our invaluable mods, have given us a little updated information at the Discord. Which, if you're a member of the Patreon or you're member on YouTube, you can join our Patreon or join our Discord. And there's also a free Discord that I allow people in there as well. So check in on the chat, and that link will come by every so often. But we have a car match and a realistic badge. The Independent says that officials say the suspect in the Minnesota shootings drove a squad-like SUV with emergency lights. Inside, they found a manifesto naming multiple lawmakers and other officials. They also wore a realistic-looking police badge. There is no question that if they were in this room, you would assume they are a police officer. Yeah. And again, this is one of the reasons why, and there's no indication that he wore a face mask or a face covering at all, but this is one of the reasons why you don't. So that the police who are around, who know everybody they work with, would go, that guy's not a cop. That guy's not from our division. That guy's not from here, right? That is yet another reason why police should not be wearing masks, as well as protesters. I got to tell you, wearing a mask at a protest gives them an excuse to scoop a lot of people up. So don't. People will have your back. If you're peacefully protesting and you're not wearing a mask.
White supremacists sure seem to like to do that.
Yeah, they do. Yes, those guys in the khakis who look like they work at in the Best Buy warehouse.
Yeah, they're like, this is my open carry. I can carry my gun. Look at me carry my gun with my mask on, so my boss doesn't know it's me.
Right, and of course, they're the reason why I think all guns sold in the United States should be bright pink.
Ooh.
Doesn't affect how they work, so I don't know what the problem is. But you don't want to walk around carrying a bright pink gun, buddy?
No, fire your pink missile at me. See if I care.
Right, exactly. So, anyways, people in the Minnesota, in Minnesota in general, because we don't know, if he's still there or where. This is a massive manhunt that's underway for this guy right now. He probably is. I would doubt. Again, I'm not going to speculate. We'll find out. I wouldn't still be wearing that stuff if I were he. But that doesn't mean he's that way. He might want to blend in. He may think that he's a soldier of, he's meant to do this. He's deputized himself. This is lunacy. And again, none of this, by the way, will ever work. He was not.
You don't think this is going to change everything?
Nope. No more than blowing yourself up in a cyber truck in front of Trump Tower, which was apparently a Trump fan's way of showing fealty or something. Remember that business?
Wait, for real?
You remember that guy? You don't remember that guy? That's how under the radar it was.
That's how much crazy stuff happens, Hal.
Right. Yeah. There was a guy in Vegas who drove his Cybertruck up to, the Trump Tower and parked it.
I don't know why I forgot it was a Cybertruck.
Yes. And did himself in, and then, and there was set off an incendiary device and then did himself in the car. And
that might be the best use of a Cybertruck, arguably.
Simmer down.
What?
They're great at throwing shrapnel on open roadways. I mean, I think that's probably, you hope that karma works the way it's supposed to work. Yeah, it was a Tesla Cybertruck the guy was in, and he was apparently a big Donald Trump fan. So much so it still boggles the mind. People still don't know, because I believe he fired into the place as well to draw attention. He shot into the glass. Yeah. Still. Yeah.
He checked all the boxes.
Yes, he did. Some folks are saying they're worried about Newsom because of this kind of thing. I don't think that guy can drive that far that fast, but it is a concern. And the copycats are always an issue in situations like this. Some of them get the idea that they would have done this. So, well, heck, if he's going to do it, I'm going to do it, and I'll do it better, right?
Yeah.
Cat Femme in the chat is joining you though, Johnny. She says, I forgot about that guy out of spite. Right? He's in a Tesla. So this is, and hold on. And there are, this was also a week, by the way, where an Indian air flight fell out of the sky, and I think 240 people died, 270. I don't know what the final count is, but there was one survivor. The guy in seat 11A survived this crash where everyone else died, sparking this story online that everybody was like, is there the safest seat to be in on a plane? He was in an exit row up against the hull, but that's not anything because you can never tell how the plane's going to hit when it hits. There is no safe place on a plane that crashes. Sorry to tell everybody that if, it depends on what goes down first, right? And you can't know ahead of time, so sit down. You could argue that being near an exit, you could, if it does land poorly and it's on fire, you can get out quicker. Unless you're stupid like me and you would stick around helping people out of the plane, which, whatever. But we have to remind everybody that all this is happening in the wake of Elon Musk saying Donald Trump's in the Epstein files, trying to make up with Trump after that, Trump basically blowing him off, which is leading to, I guess, Musk not only not giving money to Republicans in the next round of elections, but possibly actively working against them. I mean, obviously, we'll see. I wouldn't trust any of these guys at all in those terms. But that kind of a rift would normally be enough news for any 3-month period in electoral
politics. Yes, please
politics.
and thank you. That's enough.
Right. And there's an attempt by Trump, and again, there was this story of these Marines detaining someone, the first situation where Marines have detained someone on American soil since I would argue since probably the 60s or something, because we had active duty Army in amongst the National Guard and stuff in a couple of places. And so, but this is the first active, he sent Marines specifically, and they detained a guy till the cops came and got him. So they have no right to remove him from the space and move him someplace else. So the word detention was thrown around a lot when really detained is what they did. They basically held him, which citizens can do until cops arrive. So the concern is them being there. The line has already been crossed. That was not the line. The line was this guy, there's a yellow line, and this guy went under the tape and tried to go in another side of the building. If there was a citizen that held him, that it'd be the same situation. These guys were sent there to guard this particular building, and the guy went around it. They cuffed him, and he was detained temporarily, and then they let him go. They shouldn't. My point is the Marines shouldn't be in this position.
Nope.
There's no reason why these guys should have to be the ones to detain this guy, and there was no reason for even the tape to be there, because the guy, I think he was going to an appointment in the building, and he's like, I gotta wait for everybody to process through this ridiculous. I gotta go. I'm late. So he tried to sneak around and go in another door that he normally goes in, and then that's when they grabbed him.
Get him.
But there was no reason for him to have to, like, they're setting up all these people, they're guarding these buildings when the violence isn't there. Beyond mostly peaceful, it's mostly nothing. Downtown Los Angeles is fairly vacant most of the time. And so even in areas where the like there were rioters or people showing up and yelling at cops or whatever, it's like a 4-block area. The rest of it, if you didn't know what was going on, if your radio was busted in your car, you wouldn't know it was occurring. You'd be driving around downtown, you'd think they were like fixing a sewer pipe over in that area in terms of not being able to, drive through those particular roads. It's absurd. But the president needs to ratchet this up. And I would argue that, like the situation in Iran with Israel, we'll obviously talk more with Philip Ittner, who spent some time in the Middle East and has some special knowledge about this as well. That in and of itself, like, we know that led back, that all started with Trump scuttling the Iran deal. The president has not, we're not just living through the explosions from the wicks he already lit from before, but we're now watching him light more wicks in an attempt to distract from his own problems and weaknesses while walking back everything. It has been a massive taco week, and not the least of which is that his, under the table, the tariffs are going to, I'm just going to say it, they're going to go back to what they were before all this started. That's what's going to happen. And ironically, the stock market, which has been tacoing through this, will to some degree roar for a little bit. It'll, because the people that did get out will jump back in because they think, okay, this is over. We're back to normal, and they can go back to whatever plan they had for investment going forward. And he'll take credit for this like boost in the stock market when it all just came because he scuttled it, because he drove it down. Now I want to talk a little bit about the Israeli strike on Iran over the last little bit. I personally believe, and this is no way, it's not really a way to verify this specifically, that Trump knew to a certain degree. He knew they were going to hit them, but Trump does not understand battle plans or how anything works. This is really embarrassing footage. I don't know if you've seen it, Johnny, from this week where Trump, when he went
I don't know. We kind of have that in common. I don't understand that stuff either.
Well, he went to visit the army for their, before their anniversary this weekend, which coincides with his birthday. And he was doing one of those Kim Jong-un things where he stands there and they show him how the missiles work. Right? Literally, that's what this was for him. He loves watching Kim Jong-un and Putin stand out there with binoculars while missiles are being launched, while his guys tell him how awesome they are. And so he did that. He went down and visited this. He gave this address to the where he said that Joe Biden was not the sharpest bulb. Yeah. Yeah. If you're gonna egg an insult, it shouldn't be an intellectually
incapacitated. You just can't get that one wrong.
Yeah, right. You can't make fun of somebody's intellect while egging that so badly.
While getting it that wrong, yeah.
It's pretty, very Aussie. But so he's standing out there.
They're still waiting for their pieces.
Yeah, that's exactly right. They're still waiting for their pieces. It's been 30 minutes. So there's video of him standing in one of these little, booths, watching, and there's a general talking in his ear going, now that's the part that it comes out of, and that's the part that goes boom. And he's like, really? And there's helicopters flying by. It's a big show. And he apparently wanted to watch one of these training exercises. And Hegseth's standing right over his shoulder. Reports are coming out that since Signalgate, Hegseth has been showing up to work unshaven and irritable and is, quote, afraid to make decisions. And you know what my response was?
I should not have that much in common with Pete Hegseth. Unshaven and afraid to make decisions? Welcome to the club, my man.
Yeah. My response when they said he was unshaven and afraid to make decisions was good. Right? Knowing the quality of his decisions.
Let's keep those decisions to a min.
Yeah, right. I don't have a lot of faith that any of those decisions will be made, with any consideration for the factors at hand. So, yeah, probably. I'm very happy with him going. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? To the people who've been there for a while, right? Jeez. So Trump, did this kind of, standing there like Kim Jong-un, watching things go boom. Anything to distract from the fact that his best buddy egged the entire Doge thing. Again, hashtag Doge is a heist. And now has, went to this whole like, you're in the Epstein files. I take it back. And you can't. You cannot take that back. You can never take that back. You can never, ever take that back. We live in a blissfully ridiculous conspiratorial environment. So people have built entire careers on things that have never been alleged inside government and have never been said openly, but they're like, that's why they're not saying it, right? They'll literally go, obviously 9/11 was an inside job by the Vatican. Like nobody has ever brought that up. Yeah. You ever ask yourself why? You know what I mean? Like there are people online who make entire YouTube careers out of that kind of crap. So once you really do say something like Donald Trump is in the Epstein files and that's why they haven't been released, after his FBI head and the deputy director have said Epstein hung himself, and all of maggotum went, what? You can't put that toothpaste back in the tube, and Trump knows it. And so that's where we got to take a break. But here's what I would say to the No Kings protesters out there. A, be safe out there. B, I want you to do everything you can to shove the presidency down his throat. The responsibility of the presidency is an enormous one. The responsibility for the safety and security and growth and vibrancy of the American public is all on your shoulders when you're president. And Trump has never felt that before, and he's got to. He's got to. And we will watch how he responds to that, because he'll try to get away from it, but then he'll start blaming everybody else. And then if you want Pete Hegseth broomed quickly, that's how it happened. That's how it happens. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide. Now with 100% more Johnny Million. I live stream, at Infotainment Wars, and you can watch me all week long and subscribe. We'll be back.
A week.
Okay. So they.
A week.
I had this weird dream last night that Kiss hired me to be a guitar player for them, to as like a fill-in guitar player, but live on stage, and Gene was lip syncing while playing drums because they switched instruments or whatever, and I could tell, and then he got up and left, and the drums kept playing, so it was clearly a machine, and he went to the back, and I was like, I don't know if Gene's well, so I went back to check on him, and he was like on the phone, and he's like talking to his doctor or something because he was sick, and he goes back out, and then I'm back there, and there's something going on backstage, and I ran out, and they were playing All Night. I could hear it on the stage. That was what they were closing with. That's how you know this is a dream. They were closing with.
Yeah, it's got to be a dream. That is not the encore.
That's not the encore. And they were, and somebody was like coming back like, "Where's Hal?" They're asking, "Where's Hal? Why isn't he out there?" And I was like, "Oh no!" And I had to put on my giant boots and they were attached to the pants.
Oh, so boy, that's complicated.
It's very complicated. I'm like, damn it.
Isn't it wild, the details that your dreams will provide?
It's amazing. And they were already out at the autograph table, like signing stuff like it was a convention or something. And then
And you're like, I've got to finish this up without you?
Right. No, they had already finished the song and they were out there. And so I had to follow up. And Paul's sitting there like signing stuff, like giving me the stink eye because I was late to the thing. And I woke up exhausted. Because you could tell I was like, you know how your body releases sleep chemicals?
20.
Oh, thank you. So it's a sleep chemical so you don't punch yourself in the face, right? And so I was clearly I was like playing guitar, running. And so you're fighting your own body. That's why you're exhausted when you wake up. It's because when you're dreaming and you're literally like fighting against your muscles that won't be allowed to move. So you're just like, and I was like, I got up, I'm like, oh my God, what was that?
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, mega worldwide.
But I couldn't call it a nightmare, Johnny Million. I just couldn't do it.
That's not a nightmare. That's a busy dream.
It was a busy dream. So, update currently, Israel has struck Iran's one of their biggest refineries at the South Pars gas field. Because of the depth of the nuclear sites, how far they are underground. And by the way, this is not, this is not up for debate whether they have nuclear facilities deep underground. The Iranians brag about it. That's what the very strange thing about this part of it. In a crazy mixed up world, I think there are two situations in terms of national security that people might react to that are pretty cut and dry. Russia attacked Ukraine. No question. I don't know where it became any watery, somehow Ukraine is to blame for this, or the West is to blame, or America is to blame because 8 years ago or in 1950, somebody said, no, we're not moving east, 15 inches because they meant West and East Berlin, not at the time. And it was a deal made with the USSR, which is a country that doesn't exist anymore. So it hasn't existed since 1991. We had borders back then that we could have just stuck to, and yet they invaded two other countries. So the whole thing, NATO expansion, it's just garbage. It's a stupid, pathetic, weak argument. And anybody who brings it up, the response is Russia invaded a peaceful country. There was no invasion. There was no imminent strike. There was no reason for it whatsoever. There was no, hey, you guys better not park nukes on our border that was actively going on. There was not Ukraine bragging about, we've got nuclear sites and we're making our own nuclear missiles, and they got your name written all over it, Russia, right? If that were the case, it makes sense. None of that happened. Russia attacked, end of story. Anybody who says, well, it's because they were afraid of NATO expansion. Finland has a much bigger border. They're in NATO, and that never started anything. So you're a silly person. Please stop talking. Same thing with Israel and Iran. Iran clearly, through their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, the three H's. I'm so glad they haven't found a fourth organization with an H for a name, because 4H would have a really hard time rebranding.
So many H's.
So too many. So, and clearly Iran, one of the ways that it was literally saving money on warfare was using these proxies, just sending the money through, and then selling arms to Russia. And there's a very distinct reason why the maggoty crowd are against Israel striking Iran and are hoping Russia wins, because that's the side they're on. Period. End of story. The Tucker Carlsons of the world and that crowd, they are on the side of Russia. The Glenn Greenwalds, this is where the money is flowing from. This is where it's coming through tenant media. This is where, and so if you pick on Russia or Russia's friends, Russia gets mad, your nest egg dries up. End of story. That's why they're for it. That's why they want to presume innocence on behalf of an aggressive country in the case of Russia, and presume innocence on behalf of a country that has just told the world, we're going to keep refining uranium. We actually are building weapons of mass destruction. You can't do anything about it, and so shoo. And we have two goals: death to America, death to Iran. Right? They're pretty direct, right? And in our murky world, these can be pretty cut and dry. It's the when and the where of it and how you handle it that matters. Leadership matters. And we didn't have to get to a point where we had to solve these problems with violence until Donald Trump came in and buddied up to Russia and gave them the belief that they could do this and get away with it. And the same thing with Iran. You could argue that you can see that there is no real, it's a singular target situation with Israel, because the Abraham Accords countries aren't worried about being struck. And they're not joining in. They're even though they share this financial pact, this economic pact that Trump had set up, which was basically just commercial airline traffic back and forth between the countries, and Amazon package delivery from one country to the other. It's absurd. It's not a peace deal because those countries weren't at war, but they weren't friendly. But none of those countries are joining in. Even, I would argue, Saudi Arabia, which has more to lose in this situation, because the Houthis are the breakaway Yemeni group that is attacking Saudi Arabia because of religious differences and all kinds of craziness in that part of the world. So, the Israelis, attacking Iran at this point on those sites. And again, say what you will about the timing of it. This country the size of New Jersey, surrounded by all hostile actors on all sides. Let's just be abundantly clear. Even though Jordan's not actively going after them, they did, 40 years ago, or 50 years ago. And then same thing with Egypt. Like there's this idea that if they just had a change in leadership, it would all go south. But when it comes to Iran, all the kind of like hedging and worry and all that kind of stuff is fairly direct, because the Iranian leadership, not the people themselves, but the Iranian leadership is pretty bold about what they want to do. They're pretty direct. And it's all, the irony is that right now, all over Fox News and places, they're saying, well, this was inevitable. You were going to have to attack. Which means that's why they talked Trump into scuttling the Iran deal. They view this as inevitable. It didn't have to be inevitable. It didn't. Like the Ayatollah won't live forever. You can operate a functional back and forth status quo that's messy for a while without needing an all-out war. And then this guy passed away, and you might be able to rotate people through that are better. That they'll find a leader that's closer to the Persian people than the the Ayatollahs and the mullahs that took over. That's a possible future, and that's the one you shoot for. In the same way we were all shooting for a two-state solution. The goal was a two-state solution. Once Hamas came in, that two-state solution meant our state has no Jews in it. So the two-state solution we're all arguing for suddenly changes, right? That's what it meant, really. Up until 2005, the two-state solution was you run your country, we'll run ours, and then we'll trade back and forth, and people will normalize, and we'll all kind of live like we can live, and Arabs can live in Israel and vote and become part of the judiciary and all that kind of stuff, and Jews can live in this area if they want to, and we're not sure about the voting thing, but they can live here, right? That was the two-state solution they were talking about. Now that's not, since 2005, the two-state solution has been 0 Jews in Gaza and the West Bank, period, no matter where they're from. And then if we can work on it, 0 Jews in Israel. Like that's the plan of Hamas and the Islamic State in Gaza and that kind of, okay. So once that changed, that was the shift in timing. That's very, like, there's so many moving parts and it's so complex, and the social and religious aspects of it and the territorial aspects of it and the back and forth is very complex. The Iranian situation isn't necessarily. Except for solving it peacefully is complex. To solve it peacefully is a very complex thing. And that's something that the Obama administration and the Biden administration were not afraid of. Trump is incapable of comprehending anything that's complex. Everything is binary and a switch to be thrown. Turn it on or turn it off. That's it. We have, like, in the age of the complexity of computers that we have right now, where quantum computing is right around the corner, Donald Trump is still throwing switches on a Frankenstein machine, going, wonder what this does. Well, like literally walking into Frankenstein's lab with no instruction book, going, okay, give him this. All right, take that away. Okay, give this but take this away. All right, and everybody's saying, what a fresh approach. No, it isn't a fresh approach. We abandoned that approach a long time ago because it didn't work. It caused more trouble. That's how you get blowback. That's how you get, violence that cascades for decades afterwards. But he's not intellectually, mentally, philosophically, psychosexually, emotionally, or hormonally able to process any of this stuff. And it's getting worse. Newsom said this week that when he spoke to him, the guy's lost it. He couldn't keep on one one trail of thought would lead to another and break off, and then it's like wandering through a forest, with Trump while he tried to find a path, talking to him. And that's not, I said this last year when we watched him at the campaign rallies. This is not going to get better. This is not going to get better. And also for everybody who's like, oh,
he's going to have a catheter soon.
You think? What do you think the chances of that are?
No, I think he already has one.
Yeah, I think I'm looking towards the day when he has one in his ear. There's going to be a tube in his ear just draining whatever the sludge is that's in his head, out to be filtered through some device that, Elon's like, try this. I bought it at a Mexican pharmacy, right? In Tijuana. It was a little old. The battery in it had gone bad, but I cleaned the corrosion out of it a little bit. People are like, what about Vance? Oh my God. If something happens to Trump and Vance gets in there, let me tell you something. Vance is not smart. Vance is not some keen futurist that was a genius in any of these stretches. He was brought in to appeal to, because of the hillbilly elegy thing, to the sort of upper class redneck crowd and give some idea that, okay, we got a young guy if the old guy dies. But it's not because he motivates the electorate. I mean, we all saw him speak. He's not going to get better at this. He hasn't gotten better at this. And both of them are trying to accomplish something that's effectively impossible.
Yeah.
There is no situation where the tariffs work. There is no situation where his strategy of dealing with the Middle East actually functions. There's no deal that's going to be had with the Iranians, and we know this. That's why this bombing had to occur from Israel's standpoint, because Donald Trump is a moron. The best deal we could have possibly had, we had it, and he scuttled it. If they went back to that same deal, the Iranians still wouldn't sign on to it because they wouldn't trust him to keep it. Why would they? Would you? So this is a wick he lit in his first term, just like he got rid of the COPS program, just like he got rid of like all the the funding for all kinds of different programs that we are slowly but surely discovering were really necessary, and the long-term damage is going to be shocking. We got to take a break. Phil Ittner will be joining us from Kyiv right after this.
Here comes Phil.
Here he is. I see him in the background, and he's got some experience in the Middle East as well. We'll talk to him about what's going on there as well. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide. There we go. Oh, Johnny's getting ready to play. Hold on.
I'm not going to play. I am actually tuning this thing. I am. You've got to, or not? You've got to.
No,
I would love it if you rated me after this stream.
Sure, we'll do that.
Rate me, baby.
I will. Hold on. Let me bring this in here. I'm bring in Phil. There we go. And I got to move you over because everybody shuffles. Yep, it's good. It's always something. Dink. I got you. Don't worry, Johnny Million.
Ready?
Yep. Ta-da. Okay.
Better.
It's always something. Phil, and like, how much you've been keeping up with the stuff that's going on in Iran and Israel right now?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Then I'll lay it on you, and we'll talk about.
Fill me in, sure.
Yeah.
Fine,
Yeah.
fine.
Fine. We've got grumpy.
Phil
Phil
McCracken.
I mean, I just don't know.
Yeah.
That conflict, the Middle East,
Mm-hmm.
it's just the same thing over and over. And I mean, this is obviously not the same thing, but it's this constant tension in this constant.
I feel like they're about
all
to
these
figure
parties that. Yeah, any day now, right?
Any
People have
moment.
been fighting over that little stretch of land because of their magic daddy in the sky is different than your magic daddy in the sky. It's just
Sky Daddy.
Sky daddy.
Got all the answers.
Sky cake. Why are you so delicious? the old Patton's bit on that is hysterical. If you've seen it, his whole bit on sky cookies and sky cake and
I forgot about that
funny bit. It's a funny bit.
Let's see.
Oh, sky cake, why are you so delicious? Hey, good news. There's sky cake and sky pie and sky baklava. Screw you. Screw that guy to the wall.
There is not
right. Cake. I did not spend my life not raping and killing. Let's go up to the sky and have sky cake.
Yeah.
Sky cake.
Yes, it is madness. Okay, hold on.
I don't know. He's one of my favorites, Patton.
Mm-hmm.
Right up there with you, Hal.
Oh, thanks.
We got to get you over here and get you in the club.
I'm working on it.
Yeah, do a Bob Hope thing.
Hey, we had this week's episode of On the Edge is with Ken Harbaugh, and Ken was just over here.
Okay. I gotta tell you, I haven't had this much fun. I hatta tell you, I haven't had this much fun
Yeah.
out in front of the troops since Eisenhower gave me a medal for keeping down the black vote. I gotta tell you, that was, I want to say like that was.
Wow.
Was that Dave?
Get your putter over your
Dave
shoulder
Thomas?
in a Hawaiian
Yeah, right.
shirt.
Dave Thomas.
Yeah, that is Dave Thomas.
Yeah,
That is
right.
Dave Thomas. He did a fantastic.
Oh my God, he does his old hope.
I didn't know he did a Bob Hope. That's pretty
Oh
solid.
my God,
Yeah.
his he did it for years, but
It was
then
on
he does.
SCTV. Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
it
he did it on
didn't
SCTV,
he?
but he was like old hope
Back
at
in
one
20.
point. Thank you. You know, like his old hope is just miraculous because they wheel him out in a wheelchair and he's all like age spots and like it's so good.
Wow.
Yeah, hold on one second.
Funny guys.
Slappy's coming back today.
Oh, Slappy.
You're listening to the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
I've had people walk out of me before, but not when I was being so charming.
Video streaming at halsparks.com.
I don't care for you if the putrid slut you're troweling out.
Puss-faced little pimp stick.
True progressive talk.
Might be a good time for you guys to give
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Very proud to have with us our dear friend Philip Bittner, who's live in Kyiv right now, host of On the Edge, the ever-growing podcast that gives you a personal and technical look at what's going on in the war in Ukraine. And we appreciate you being here. Johnny Million is still with us, and I'm going to be rating him on Twitch after the end of today's show. Yes, and we'll.
Yes, you are.
Yes, we are absolutely. Even though you're blurry, I'm not going to hold that against you. I think you.
I'm
leaned
blurry
back.
again? All right, hang on. Gotta reset.
That
How does that
happens. It's
happen?
It might be a personal thing. I want to start with a little bit of good news, if I could, in this one. This would be, see if I can get this over here all right. There was another prisoner exchange, I think the fourth one this month or this week in Ukraine of prisoners. And there are a couple of things I want to point out. One, good. I'm glad these people are coming home. I wish they could do it with the kids, obviously, Phil. But I want everybody they can see the images online, or you can look it up yourself. Look at how skinny they all are. These guys are draped in flags when they come out, mainly because they're cold. So that they're draping the flags around them in recognition, but they're also like almost using them like blankets. And these guys, you can tell these are big dudes, and they are wasted away. Their arms are small. They're all haggard. They've been through it, and it's clear that they are not being treated according to the laws of war while they're in Russian hands at all. We just hope that they keep, releasing these guys. But it's good news that they're back. It's rough news that they are there in the first place, or that this is ongoing. Johnny's still frozen, but he'll be back in just a second.
I'm going to reconnect.
Well,
I'll be right back.
We've had a couple of former POWs on the show before.
Right.
We had Sean Pinner, and we had Aiden Aislinn. And the description of what they went through in those prisons is absolutely horrific. And you're right. All you have to do is look at these guys as they're getting off the bus, these Ukrainian guys, and their skin and bones. Mm-hmm. And then also you contrast that by the guys that the Ukrainians are releasing, and they're fine. They're fine. They're clearly
right.
Fed,
they're healthy.
They've been fed. They're healthy. I'm sure it wasn't a day in the park for them. They were in a prisoner of war camp, but they are in sharp contrast to what Russia is returning to Ukraine. And as a matter of fact, we hear stories, not too rare, of like people going to Russian POWs and saying, "We're going to exchange you," and them being like, don't want to go back.
Right.
Don't want to go back. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Certainly, the North Koreans, we've seen a lot of that with the North Koreans, where they're literally, their reports saying that they're like, you know what, just tell them I'm dead. Yeah. Because
seriously,
if they're captured, they go back. Kim Jong-un might harm their family or ultimately kill them if they're returned. So why go back?
Sure, they'll be suspect.
Yeah. Did you give
were
up?
In the hands of the enemy. We don't.
Yeah.
Did you give up? Or have you returned to us a turncoat? Mm-hmm. We can't trust you. You know, when you
Yep.
when you run the what is it, the Hermit Kingdom, you know, any infiltration by a foreign element. And also, you don't want these guys coming back to the Hermit Kingdom and being like, do you know what
Right.
I saw over there? You know, they
Yeah.
have
It was
indoor
awesome.
plumbing. They have
Right.
people get fed. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you don't have to, you don't have secret police, you know, banging down your door every night. You know,
Right.
it's yeah, no, obviously the North Korean guys don't want to go back, but even the Russians are like, we don't.
Yeah. In other
What do we
news,
got here? What is
it's the Su-25 being shot down.
Ah,
This is
yes, the
footage. Right.
Su-25.
Yeah. So right now, there's
I haven't
it's
seen that
abundantly
footage, yeah.
clear, yeah, that that the Russians have never had air dominance, and which is one of the first things you get whenever you're going in. They've never managed to do it, which is shocking considering who they were fighting against at the time. You would think, you know, maybe they tried to avoid it so that there wouldn't be a no-fly zone, so they could give, you know, U.S. and Europe the ability to not have to call for one, you know, so they didn't seek total, you know, air dominance over it because that would be the response. But even still, like why they wouldn't do it later after they were losing is anybody's guess. Maybe they, you know, and except for maybe they've lost the capacity to. We have found out this week that, you know, Ukrainians were in, you know, in country or, you know, I guess people who were saboteurs who were sympathetic to the Ukrainians were in country spotting for these drone attacks, you know, and making sure that the vehicles were in the right place and all that kind of stuff. The same thing
Buying
is true
SIM
of,
cards.
yeah, Israel in Iran. We now know that there were, you know, agents, you know, Mossad agents or other agents in Iran spotting where these nuclear scientists or these leaders were. You had a very similar situation where I don't know what's taken them so long, but the Russians and the Iranians seem to have the same kind of brain drain happening amongst them or something that. But or maybe it's just that the Ukrainian and the Israeli attacks are that extraordinary. But the Ukrainian drone attack, I think people are still marveling about how that happened, Operation Spiderweb and the like. But the same thing is true of you know, of the Iranian situation. The Iranians apparently knew that when there's an airstrike, all of the brigadier generals of the IRGC meet in one particular bunker to discuss the response. They're all called to that place. So Israel hit it second, like right after the first like planes entered. As soon as the planes, well, I think they actually struck it physically first. As soon as the planes entered and they could be seen on radar, that the Iranians knew they were in there. All these generals ran to this one place, and that's the place that the Iranians hit first, killing all the leadership and basically eliminating a functional response. The Israelis killed all the Iranian leadership. Yeah.
Right.
Of their air force.
Decapitated their, yeah.
Right. And it seems like, you know, for all this talk of Trump playing 11D chess when he can't even understand, you know, which side of a checker goes up, you know, there is a lot of, you know, innovation in dealing with this that you know, in I guess in the Israeli and the Ukrainian world that is just changing the entire game. And they didn't have to. They were already holding back this force by itself. The smaller force was already beating the larger force at their own game to some degree. But the tide is turning. By the way, we have hit a big milestone, Phil. We have officially crossed that barrier. And part of this, let me see if I can shrink this down. I'll try to bring that. But it's... with the 1 million number, there it is.
1 million casualty
Wish I could
threshold has been passed.
Expand this so that it's bigger.
Yeah.
And
this is also, you know, this is also a week where we've surpassed the 1 million man casualty mark in terms of Russia. And it also comes at a time when Zelensky is saying that he believes, and I think he's right, that the primary goal is now shifted to Odessa. They want to take Odessa. And if they if the Russians try to take Odessa, which is, you know, one of the largest cities in Ukraine and strategically vital to them because it's their gateway to the Black Sea and getting their their foodstuffs out into the market. It would be devastating to lose. And the Russians fight for little towns that are built for 50,000 people.
Yeah.
They're going to have to march down to Odessa, leaving behind cities in there, because you can't leave them in the rear of your military spearhead.
Right.
They're going to have to pacify, destroy, whatever you want to say, cities that are built for hundreds of thousands of people, and they've lost over 1 million people already. So for them to try and take Odessa,
right,
is going to be hundreds of thousands of more casualties before they even get to the gates of the city, and then the Ukrainians are going to make them absolutely pay to try and take Odessa itself. And I don't know if the West will passively sit there and watch.
Right.
Because if the Russians can control Odessa, they control a huge percentage of the world's food and distribution of the world's food supply. I don't think the Europeans will sit by passively and watch that happen. It would be catastrophic for them. I think the West to lose Odessa. So yes, we're over 1 million casualties in the Russian military since the full-scale invasion began. But if Zelensky's right and they try to go for Odessa, they're going to lose hundreds of thousands more before this thing is over.
Yeah, it's absurd. And again, I'm showing this online for people that are watching, but that is an enormous casualty number. That is an absurd casualty number for a war like this that they chose, that they planned for. That this, Trump was always talking about how it was the apple of his eye. The weird phrase that he uses, which sounds like something Epstein would say more than something Putin would say, right? And yet, if that's true, if it was the apple of your eye and it meant more to you and it was the seed of your entire, you would think that your plan to take it would be a lot more successful and a lot less blunt, right? This is in
he didn't count on the Ukrainians.
No, he did not. Yeah, and he didn't count. I mean, this idea that he saw us getting out of Afghanistan, thought that there was so much weakness that this was the time to go. Obviously, this was a ridiculous miscalculation, and I think the answer to that is whenever Trump brings it up, he was wrong. Putin saw that and he thought, this is a great time to go in. He was wrong. He was terribly wrong. It was the exact opposite. The reality is we now had more resources to help Ukraine than ever before. We wouldn't be spending billions of dollars a month in Afghanistan, and that's money that could go to support Ukraine and did, and arguably helping Ukraine win this on the cheap was, it is much more effective and much more in line with our national interests, certainly, than whatever we were doing in Afghanistan for a long time, right? By everybody's measure.
Yeah, the idea that whoever was in the Oval or whatever happened in the withdrawal from Afghanistan or any other number of factors that Trump seems to think caused this war only reveals his ignorance about the region and about the causes for this war. When you have a guy, the first president of Chechnya was a guy by the name of Joker Dudayev, okay? And when the Chechen Republic broke away from the Russian Federation after the collapse of the Soviet Union, this is the guy who was the first president of that separatist region. And he is on tape clearly saying, ultimately, the post-Soviet world and the Russian Empire will either, reconquer Ukraine or its back will be broken on Ukraine. It is Ukraine that will decide the future of Moscow. And he said that in 1995.
Right.
So this war was a long time coming.
Yes.
That had a lot less to do with anything and it's just anything to do with American decision making or policy or anything like that. It's not inconsequential, of course. America is a huge power broker on the global stage, but what always bothers me is this myopic view of America that nothing happens globally unless America is somehow driving it or somehow controlling it. Sometimes it's not about us. Sometimes it's about actual regional players and history and those dynamics. Ukraine and Russia were always headed towards a collision course because Russia, Moscow, was always going to come for Ukraine because this is the cornerstone of their empire. And if they don't have Ukraine, they don't have empire. And Russians, without that identity, are going to have to look in the mirror and do some retrospective reforms, and they don't want to do that. So it's not Trump, it's not America, it's Ukraine and Russia. That's why this war is happening.
Absolutely. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. Yeah, and Johnny will have questions for Phil and for myself. We're also Tim Walz made a statement on on the shooting in Minneapolis and the Minneapolis area. We'll have a little bit of an update after we come back from the break.
That's a horrible story.
Yeah.
The Minnesota situation, and I think the day is going to get worse.
Yeah, especially with because what's happening and we'll talk a little bit.
Short break, 20 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll talk about what's going on in Iran and Israel just because of the geopolitics. I would argue that it's the same thing, that this has been going on for a long time too.
Well, I was in Geneva for the JCPOA.
You're locked into the Hal Sparks radio program, Mega Worldwide.
We're back, and we're going to take some questions from our chat room at Infotainment Wars and at Twitch and at Facebook. They all kind of gaggled together, I think. And you were just saying, Phil, we were talking during the break. You were in Geneva for the JCPOA, the nuclear deal that the Obama administration struck. What was your experience of that then? Because all the people who are saying that the Obama deal was terrible, but and it was inevitable we were going to attack. It sounds like they never believed there should have been one in the first place. Most of them, certainly not Netanyahu, feels that way. And
well, of course, Netanyahu would feel that way.
Yeah, right. But they know that this was never going any the way anybody who talks about it that it was inevitable, they have to look back at what they were saying about the development of the deal, or whether they wanted a new deal, or whether Trump was going to make a new deal, and know that they were BSing the entire time. Because if you think something's inevitable, why would you ever make a deal on it? It's a contradiction that they can't answer. So, you were there for that, though.
I was there for those negotiations, a series of negotiations. People forget how hard that thing was to get organized and passed and get all the agreements signed on. And it was a really difficult thing to get agreed upon. And because the Iranians were sticking on certain things about, like, we want to be able to use, nuclear power to run like medical, certain medical aspects, or we want to have it for power.
Yeah,
and so
for radiation for MRIs, right?
Radiation for MRIs, and also, for their power grid, for their electrical grid. But then there's the question of enrichment, and how far can you, to what level can you enrich uranium, and how do we inspect it? This was an incredibly difficult thing to get past. It was over the better part of a year. Looking back, maybe I'm mistaken, but I want to say it was like 8 months and 3 or 4 rounds of talks. And of course, Lavrov was there, and Kerry, and all the rest of it. And it was not as simple or as easy as I think folks, certainly on the right, the GOP and the Trump camp, would have us believe. It was a very difficult thing to achieve. And so to chuck it out on a whim was really counterproductive. And you're right. I think it leads us inevitably to where we are now. And we know the Israelis, weren't keen on it. They were, while they weren't officially there, because of course the Iranians wouldn't be involved with the talks if the Israelis had representatives involved too.
Right.
But everybody knew that Israel was, was in the negotiations, if not in the negotiation room. They had
Right.
their proxy in the form of the U.S. delegation and other delegations that were there that were probably listening to Israeli influence
Hmm.
efforts.
Right.
But yeah, the Israelis were against it from. Yeah, the Israelis have always wanted to deal with this militarily.
Hmm.
They've always thought that this question of Iran's nuclear capacity should be dealt with in this kind of like null sum
Hmm.
game, this binary thing where it's like, well, we're just going to keep
Right.
destroying it. We'll just keep knocking them down, and we'll just
Hmm.
keep doing
You,
that until
right.
what? I don't know, but
Well,
yeah,
again, there's a bunch of situations we've confronted over the last little bit, like India and Pakistan, that the fighting came to a draw because of the possibility of nuclear war. That would be the mutual assured
yeah,
destruction thing kind of kicking in. Whereas on the other side, Russia has used mutual assured destruction as an umbrella under which it can attack anyone, and if you try to stop them, they will threaten with nukes. And Iran being aligned with Russia, I think there's more of a chance if they had a nuclear weapon that it would be like that for the rest of the Middle East than it would be this sort of Pakistani Indian draw, right? That
yeah.
yeah, and
Well, and
also
what message does this send? I mean, what message does this send? I mean, look at what's
get
happening
a
here in
nuke
Ukraine.
or you won't be. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
1994, we get the Budapest Memorandum. The Ukrainians give up their nukes, and now look what's happened. So
right.
we are having this continual problem, and we're going to have to address it. Is this, if Russia is successful here, it's because the Ukrainians gave up their nukes. Full
Right. And
stop. So what does that say to every
potential
country
dictator,
everywhere in
potential
the
country.
world
Right.
that has a potential enemy that is bigger than them, a neighboring country or a country in the region that is bigger than them and is going to be aggressively threatening that smaller
Mm-hmm.
country's interests. And the
Mm-hmm.
lesson that is being put forward now with this war here and with what's happening in
Iran.
Iran,
Right. Yeah.
if you don't have a nuke,
Right.
then you're going to get bullied, and that's just a dangerous policy to have as the status quo.
Yeah. It's always a curious thing because Israel clearly has nukes, but almost never talks about them. And
Hmm.
hasn't even drawn on this like we have nukes, we could just use them, because it seems like they expect to have it as a mad tool eventually in the future, as opposed to a threatening tool like Russia uses. So it really does depend on the country. But the situation you're describing is any dictator who doesn't want to be, who's got a paranoid vision of the world where he's going to be shut down, is going to want to have them because they can threaten the world with them, like Putin does, or arguably to some degree like Xi Jinping does. Although I think they think their navy is the version of that, which it isn't, but whatever. And right, and then Israel has them as a kind of like, we don't need these, but you can tap them like Doc Holliday's gun, I suppose, if things got really squirrely. The Iranians want them for probably the most overt reason on the planet, more than the Pakistanis. Like, people will forget that Pakistan has nukes before they'll forget that Iran wants one desperately. Now, it might be the fact that they don't have them yet, and when they did, it would be a totally different game, and then you would have mutual assured destruction. And then what? The roughest part is that Iran used to be a place where the British went skiing, where there was actual peace, and they were of the Middle Eastern states, it was the most European in that regard, in that it was just about trade and culture rather than war. And since the Ayatollahs took over, thanks MI6, it's been this has been going on. I think this is why some people think it will end militarily, because there was something before it in the near past that you could point to and go, it used to be like
Yeah.
this. Russia's the opposite. Russia's like, it's bad now, but it was worse before. Oddly enough. Whereas Iran, you're like, it's bad now, but it was good before. So is there a way
Yeah.
to get back to that? And there, obviously, implanting someone or trying to put somebody in charge isn't going to be the way to do it. A regime change from externally is not going to do it. toppling the Ayatollah is clearly one of the Israel's goals. You think? Like if it
Oh,
was,
100%.
yeah. So
I mean, well, and also, I mean, there is a very large young population in Iran that doesn't necessarily agree with the revolution. There's a wonderful film, and I'm going to try and remember the exact title. Nobody talks about Persian cats, and it's this it's this depiction of a young couple in Iran who are kind of trying to get out, and they're young lovers in a highly religious world where there's moral police, and it's a fascinating depiction of Iranian life and how these young people are kind of pushing back against. So the revolution is not maybe as stable as some folks would have you believe, but I mean, this, and we talked about this briefly before in the break there, how one of the problems that I have talking about the Middle East, and this is the entire conflict and the entire region, is that there are so many deep issues and divides and conflict. I mean, people have been fighting over that part of the world for millennia, literally. And there's so many people that benefit from the conflict that, this is the frustration I always found the frustration of covering that part of the world is just that some people don't want peace. They don't want peace. They're too invested in war.
Well, and or the grudge lives on because of the damage done, and
or the grudge
people can't stop. And that's, I mean, that at some point, I'm always on the side of the group that will, if they put their guns down, they will be wiped out, and if the other side put their guns down, the war would be over. In Russia's case with Ukraine, if the Ukrainians put their guns down, they would be wiped out. If the Russians put their guns down, the war would be over tomorrow. It just would. And everybody in Ukraine, as much as they would hate the Russians, would try to seek back some level of normalcy, at least with the citizenry of the other country, while calling for the leadership to go to jail. And that's how you know who's right in these situations. Which side, if they put down their guns, would be wiped out, and then the other side is the aggressor, because they would take advantage of it. Right, that's the clear part of this. And if the Iranian regime stepped down or whatever, Iran would be a totally different country. That's the situation we're in. It is very different than, say, even Gaza and the West Bank, or or any of the stuff between the Saudis and the other Middle Eastern countries. It's a totally different situation, and it stands out that way the same way Russia does. And it's no surprise they're friends. We got to take a break. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, Mega Worldwide.
Yeah, I don't miss the Middle East. Lebanon's lovely, but the rest of the Middle East.
Brian Karam is Lebanese. His family is from there, and I mean, there used to be a period to which
beautiful.
And I got to say, this is 100% oil. This is oil. I mean, it's
what it boils right down to oil and religion, but yeah.
But the religious people exist in Central Africa and other places, even in Asia and other places, but they don't have any strength to institute terrorism or fighting or gain control over other groups of people in their area, wipe out other tribes, take over stuff without the oil money. If we shifted to an entirely renewable situation, we would never have to deal with this stuff. It would all go back to countries are totally different when they have to start selling goods to other countries to matter in the world. Versus I'm sitting on top of the stuff you need, and if you need to get it, you got to put up with me. And if that guy's standing on top of it, I can just kill him and take what's under his feet. It doesn't, all you got to do is dig it up and sell it. That's a terrible situation, especially when the world needs it.
It's the well scene in Lawrence of Arabia.
Back in 20.
Yes, right.
Yeah, I agree with you generally. I think religion does play a little bit more into it than what you're saying, but just basically because it has all the most important sites in all the Abrahamic religions, and so
Right, but if again, if you weren't able to
Welcome
fund
back
that
to the
with
House
oil
Sparks
money,
radio
it
program,
doesn't matter.
Mega Worldwide.
I mean, it should surprise no one that during the break, Philip Bittner and I figured out the entire Middle East, and we've solved it. It's fine.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah. We should have taped it, but we didn't. We'll have to. I'll remember what we said. We'll write it down.
You took notes, right?
Yeah, I no. Well, I was.
I was gonna. It seemed important, but then I was like, ooh.
Oops,
cat picture.
Something shiny, right?
Johnny over there in the corner with his little stenographer's machine.
So, Johnny, do we have some questions backing up? I'm sure that we do.
Yeah, sure do. All right, first question back to the top from Connie Kelly. Did Ukraine expect the opening of a front in the Sumy region?
I don't think so. I think it took them slightly by surprise. I don't think they were caught with their pants down necessarily, but yeah, I mean they didn't really concentrate their troops in Sumy. Perhaps there's criticism here that maybe they should have, because of course Sumy is where they launched. The Ukrainians launched their incursion into the Kursk Oblast. These are bordering oblasts on either side of the border. So Ukraine goes into Kursk. Fights around and kind of does this maneuver thing inside Kursk, and then they get pushed back onto this side of the border into Sumy. And as you're kind of doing even an orderly retreat, which is kind of what the this is what the Ukrainians did, is they withdrew from Kursk and fell back into Sumy. Even though it was a relatively orderly retreat, you're still in a form of retreat, so you're vulnerable, and they took advantage of it. So I don't think they quite expected what is happening in Sumy there, but also we shouldn't overstate what's happening in Sumy. They're still fighting over a relatively small patch of territory, strategically a little bit more important for Ukraine, but there's no rout or anything like that. The Ukrainian army is not in any vulnerable position of imminent collapse. It's just even in Sumy. So, and
again, it must be noted that last night Russia crossed the 1 million casualty mark. Only because the Iranian strikes happened at the same time is that not, creating, more news. But I would like to also just stack those two things on this idea that Trump would be the peace president and that we had the world at peace when he was in office, but now everything, and it will be again because he's magically, and then I guess he goes to the Temple Mount next and declares himself God on earth. Is that how how Revelations plays out in this Timu version of Revelations?
Well, apparently he had a phone call with his daddy in the Kremlin today. According to the Kremlin, Trump called up Putin and they had a conversation, but it seems to have been focused more on Iran and Israel than it was on Ukraine. Shocker. Surprise.
Yeah, and again, speak to that a little bit or whatever, because is it that you think that he's under the feeling that Russia has Iran on a leash, or Trump is under the impression that they have Iran on a leash, and therefore, I thought you were going to give me a peace deal through them the same way you were going to give me a resolution to this in an hour, right? That he was supposed to fix all this.
Well, sure. Well, I mean, it is true that Putin has the relation between Tehran and Moscow is, everybody knows it exists. I mean, they're getting Iranian drones. I get fired at almost nightly by Iran-style or Iranian drones.
Yeah.
Either a drone that Russia created in the mold of the Shahed, or Shaheeds themselves straight out of an Iranian factory. So yeah, Moscow and Tehran are chums. They're pals. And I suspect he thought maybe his good buddy Putin would exert some influence on Tehran. Because I do think, look, we've discussed this many times. I think Trump is compromised by Russia. How much we don't know, and in what way we don't know. But the sheer fact that he regurgitates Russian information warfare narratives is enough for us to say he's compromised, along with his cabinet. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm looking at you. But he really, I think he really thinks Putin's his buddy. Right. That Putin respects him or something, or that they because they went through the Russia Mueller investigation, which was 100% legitimate, and I reiterate it every time I talk about the Mueller report. The Mueller report was not discredited; it was obstructed. So we
Yeah.
always have to remember that. But he
Of
thinks
course,
that
they weren't
because
even
they
allowed to
went
look at the
through
money
it
aspect.
together,
Right.
no, they weren't able to pursue the money. And they also had a number of witnesses they called that just said pound sand.
Yeah.
So it was obstructed. It was not.
Mm-hmm.
It was not discredited. The Mueller report. Look, the Russians were in our election in 2016. They've been in our body politic ever since. But he thinks because they have this common trial by fire that they went through that they're buddies. That's not how Putin looks at things.
Right.
Putin will shank Trump at the drop of a hat.
You can argue that that's beginning now because again, so the idea was Trump was, and this is my opinion, but check me on whether you think this is solid. Putin viewed Trump not as a friend or an ally or somebody who would share in programs or whatever, but a chaos agent that would help bring down America, and that he would eventually, in his stupidity and his aggressive policies based on what the Chinese would call feng pi, butt air, would eventually damage the economy and the like, while he had to string this guy along in the first term. And in the second term, then you just release all the stuff that you have on him, set your attack dogs on Trump, bring down America at the same time you bring down Trump, because he's not going to run again. You don't need him after that point, right? So now Trump is in this situation where in the first term, he could be Putin could want him under the illusion that he was going to be helped by him. But now, Putin gains more by hanging him out to dry. Right?
Sure. Well, and it is Russia's stated geopolitical goal to incite a civil war within the United States. It's part of doctrine that they teach at the Russian Naval College in St. Petersburg. Is that and navies are often the ones that are connected with intelligence for obvious reasons. They have to coordinate the transportation of ships around the globe, so they have to have really strong intelligence. So navies are often very, very close to intelligence and intelligence warfare. And it's taught at their naval college. The doctrine that is our stated goal, our intent, is to cause disruption, divide and conquer, civil unrest, and hopefully civil war in the United States, because they can't beat us if we stick together. Their whole concept is divide and conquer. So break Britain off from continental Europe with Brexit. Make a divide between the transatlantic alliance by having a guy like Trump, really drive a wedge in the NATO alliance. All of this stuff plays right into what Moscow wants to have happen. And if you really do look into their doctrine and their stated position when it comes to intent geopolitically, their intent is to divide and conquer, cause disruption in the United States, which they see as their primary enemy, and basically try to make us take ourselves down.
Right.
And Trump's part of that, and Putin knows it. And
right.
That's Putin's intent.
Yeah, because my feeling is in the beginning, Putin had something to gain from tricking Trump into thinking he's a buddy. He has more to gain by making Trump think he's been hung out to dry, because he knows Trump has no friends and will cling to it anyway. So he doesn't have to do any more like convincing that he's a friend. Look at how he talks about Xi Jinping. And I wanted to bring this up before we go to our next break. So Xi Jinping has been having health problems. It's been, fairly wide reported by netizens and others, and it sneaks out every so often. The idea is that he had 2 cardiac arrest issues, either 2 direct heart attacks or a major quake and followed up by a minor quake in May. And since then has been kind of fading from public view a lot. And there's the idea that Wang Yang and Zhang Youxia, which are the 2 kind of guys right below him in his power structure that he has built, because unlike Russia, you have to build some strong men in there because the country's so big and there's so many people. That the question will be, who's the new leader? Who will be the new leader of China once he goes? Some people are saying as early as mid-July he could be stepping down because of they'll let him step down because of health reasons, and Wang Yang will take over as in his position, and then Zhang Youxia, who's the military leader. Deng Xiaoping was the military leader as well. He was not the secretary of the Communist Party. He was not the chairman of the Communist Party. So he didn't end up becoming he was de facto the president of China, but he was not. They don't have a president. It's whoever has the most control, whether it's the military or the Communist Party themselves, like the committee. The committee chairman or the leader of the military will be the leader. And it looks like people are leaning more towards Zhang Youxia, who's the military leader. But I got to say, if Xi Jinping is still in control of China by September, it'll be a miracle. And that is a major shift happening as well. And the two guys behind him are, they're viewed as status quo people, but nobody really knows because you have to play like you're status quo. This would be, and this kind of speaks to the Russian leadership thing. Are there people around Vladimir Putin who are playing him because they know how they have to speak to him, or they'd be dead already? So is there somebody maybe that's like, all right, I'll be the good guy. I can make so much money and stabilize this country, but I got to play along with what Putin says until he topples and move myself closer and closer. And then, once he goes, I come in and go, all right, enough of this nonsense. He was nuts. Let's do something. We'll try to remedy this. We'll lay it all at his feet because he's dead or in prison or fled, right? There's nobody really knows whether Wang Yang will be that kind of person, as a chairman Wang, and Zhang Youxia isn't as hardline wanting Taiwan as Xi Jinping allegedly is, and that's largely political. So, is there a chance that there's somebody in the wings in Russia that is aware of the game? They're aware of how dangerous Putin is, and they know, okay, if I'm going to survive this, I got to play up to him. Like there are, the Thunes of the world in our, situation, which are playing nice with maggots and playing nice with Trump. But ultimately, when he comes in, the America they want is very different from what Trump wants. We'll talk about it when we come back. Hold that thought. Think about it over the break. We got to take a break. I want to hear Phil's opinion on this. If there are basically people waiting in line in the Pez dispenser almost at the top, that once this goes, we could actually expect a leader that could possibly be benevolent, but a little closer to the reality of what the people want. We'll be back right after this. It's the Hal Sparks Radio program, mega worldwide. Patreon.com/Hal Sparks. And of course, we're going to raid Johnny Million after the show today. We'll be back right after this. We are also running a goal in the super chats. If you could, that'd be lovely. And if we make our super chat goal, we'll make Phil tell us what's in his weird green beverage. Don't tell us yet. Don't say it yet. It's a secret. I'm kidding. And I'm also running a poll in the YouTube chat right now, which is Putin's Trump compromise economic or sexual? Money or PP tape? And we're kind of on the margins right now. People are leaning more towards money versus P tape level stuff. Now, I'm not saying an exact P tape. I'm saying that's emblematic of the kind of compromise he might have, like more than the Epstein files. Maybe he has all of Trump's his flight logs.
20 seconds.
His fright logs. It would be frightening to fly on his party plane.
Fright log.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be terribly surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, he's just the kind of stupid that would actually get a lady of the evening while he was in Moscow.
Right.
I am happy, you are happy, let us be happy together, whether the weather is cloudy or sunny. I will always be your funny honey bunny. I am lucky, you are lucky, let us get lucky together, whether the weather is cloudy or breezy. I'll be there to say, hey, come on, let's take it easy. 'Cause isn't it nice to have the friends that you do? And isn't it nice that the sky is so blue? And isn't it nice to say I love you, chugga chugga choo choo, woo woo. I am smiling, you are smiling, let us smile together, whether the weather is cloudy or stormy. I will still be there in the morning, I'll be right by your side in the morning. I'll make you breakfast in the morning, I hope that you like cereal.
Yay! Hooray!
I just want to put out there that there are life is going on in the midst of all this stuff that's out there. There was a story of this lady who was 81 years old. She was working as a waitress. She couldn't afford to retire. So a stranger raised $300,000 for her. setting up basically like a GoFundMe kind of thing. And so she's now retiring with a $300,000 nest egg, which is really lovely. There are people all over the world right now making sure sea turtles survive to get to the water, and you know that that they are protecting immigrants from these like ICE raids. There are business leaders all over the place that had worked with these people who are coming out on television finally and speaking openly, going, "These people are family, and you should leave them alone." They are siding with Gavin Newsom, like people in Nebraska and Arkansas and the Dakotas. Why we need 2 Dakotas, no one knows. But we have 2 of them, unfortunately, which means 4 senators leaning that way, which is annoying, and I will never let that go. But in the meantime, there are things like that happening. And the No Kings rally is happening today as counter-programming to Trump's small Jim parade that he's having to make himself feel better about his sexual inadequacies while he sits there with a pillow over his lap. Michael Wolff finally came out.
I totally forgot about his military parade. It's really happening?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't expect to see anything today on it. Yeah, it's. I mean, they're spending a lot of money, but I don't think it's gonna really. You'll see much. Pretty much. I don't know. Maybe it's happening. Who knows? Well,
why is that? Is it getting rained out or something? I heard there was.
Well,
weather.
no. Well, I think we're being facetious. It is on even if it's raining today. But it would be so great if it literally rained on his parade. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Those tanks are going to tear up the street. So dumb.
It's so stupid, right? And by the way, there's more information, unfortunately, coming out about the guy who's trying to assassinate top Dems. He dropped a target list that was with his manifesto that includes Tim Walz. So far, the man suspected of killing state lawmaker has been identified as a former aide of Governor Tim Walz named Vance Luther Boatler. Law enforcement officials told them Boatler, 57, was appointed to Minnesota Governor's Workforce Development Board in 2019. That's a while back. According to a document available online, the board advises the governor on Minnesota's workforce. He left behind a manifesto and a list of potential next targets that include Tim Walz. The list, whose existence was confirmed by law enforcement earlier on Saturday, contained the names of top Minnesota Democrats Walz, Ilhan Omar, Tina Smith, Keith Ellison, and the items recovered from his suspect car after he fled the shootout. So he is. I'm trying to find if they've actually gotten him yet, because they're trying to. These are kind of updates as they're coming in. But he killed Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark Hortman, and then he shot John Hoffman and his wife, Yvette Hoffman. They are still alive. They're recovering from their wounds. He was cornered by police at the Hortman home while they checked out, which they checked out after Hoffman was shot. He exchanged gunfire with the police, but was able to escape out the back of the house on foot. He's white, brown hair, appeared to be impersonating a police officer wearing a vest. He had a taser and a badge. The suspect's car, which was in Hortman's driveway, was also made to look exactly like an SUV squad car, which is probably how he got them to open their door and approach the victims. We're asking the public not to attend today's planned demonstrations across Minnesota out of an abundance of caution. This will obviously change if they catch the guy, but there is still a massive manhunt underway right now. He's considered armed and dangerous, and he is still out there. Please be safe if you're in the Minneapolis area, and keep an eye out. Let's see. I'll see if I can find a picture of the gentleman and show everybody, so that if you are in that area, because our radio station in Chicago and its affiliates reach into that area, so we want to make sure that people are aware of this stuff. I will have that up in a minute, but let's see if we have any other questions while I'm doing that, Johnny Million, for Phil.
Yeah, right on. So next question from Ed's 3D Tech. Can you ask Philip, since Ukraine has aircraft carrier trucks and trains now, does Ukraine have aircraft carrier outhouses?
Yeah. Well, they're very inventive. Who knows? Little porta potties filled with drones, maybe. Drop them off at a festival in Russia and then let them go.
All right,
no,
this
I don't
one's
know. Look,
from
this thing in Minnesota, by the way. Hold on. One quick. So sorry, Johnny.
No, not
this
at
whole
all.
thing in Minnesota, it's obviously very distressing.
Yeah.
But this speaks to this divide and conquer attitude. That I'm not. I want to be very clear here. I'm not making any accusations that Russia.
Yeah.
But we have gotten to a place in our country, egged on and facilitated by the Russians. To what extent, I don't know. We have to take responsibility and authority for our own actions, but the division in the United States is being aided and abetted by Moscow. Our guest this week on the Edge is part of the Midas network, Ken Harbaugh, who is a former U.S. naval pilot. And he comes over here and does a lot of stuff with Ukraine, but he also is greatly involved in veteran affairs. And we talk in the episode about not just about Ukraine, but at one point we do discuss like veterans affairs and how a lot of guys who were traumatized in Iraq and Afghanistan have rotated back to America and, gone into kind of, or, law enforcement or this kind of, this militia aspect, which this has all the trappings of this kind of militia mentality. And, we've got some real work to do in the United States when it comes to mental health and when it comes to pushing back against those who would divide and conquer us. So anyhow, sorry, I just wanted to say that.
Just and again, the details of this will be curious to people. The suspect himself worked for 4 years as part of the governor's workforce development board in 2019. He was, the idea that he was an assistant or an aide to Waltz is a little silly. He was appointed with a bunch of other people. I don't know what he's been doing since then. But he and his list of people to kill seems to be all Democrats. And he and his wife had no kings flyers in their cars. Now, again, this is how you would get close to kill somebody. This kind of points to what I'm talking about, where that's how you would arrange to kill these folks, is that you would want to get close and carry this out. But it seems to be the same guy who was appointed to the board in 2019 for 4 years. He, obviously that job is over. He was the stuff he posts online seems to be, very much, in line with sort of the word. Like if you saw him online, you would just read him as as somebody supportive of democracy and leaning left or whatever. How that mixes with his killing of Democrats is beyond me. They're not saying what his reasoning is beyond this. So we can't know until we do know. But he shot these people, and all of them are Democrats. But he's apparently got a No Kings flyer in his car window. That said, again, that's how you get close to these situations and harm people. So taking it at face value, I'm not willing to do. But that's what we know so far. They're looking for this guy in particular. Again, he was dressed as a police officer. He killed he killed one couple and attempted to murder the other. He has a list of people that he wants to kill, that he planned on killing. If he's still trying to carry that plan out, nobody knows. And he fled on foot, and he is at large still. So that's what we know so far.
Distressing,
to say the least. Yeah. We've got one couple killed and one couple that is still injured. They are expected to survive. On that note, we will keep you posted. And I'm sure there will be breaking news about that until such time as he's caught. If he is caught again, I presume maybe the march won't go on in Minnesota simply for safety's sake in case of copycats and other stuff. That might be an issue. That could be true anywhere, though, so I would suspect that a lot of people will want to do it anyways. Just be safe out there and be vigilant, especially until this guy is caught. But what I will say is that there is no way to ratchet up violence in one direction. It will always result in the ratcheting up of violence in both directions. It's why we're against it. It's why I am always against political violence, period, full stop. That once you open that gate, you can't get it closed. people will go, well, they're doing it, so we got to do it. Otherwise, we're going to be just victims in this situation, right? And so
wars are always easier to start. Wars are always
Yeah.
easier to start than stop.
Exactly.
And let me just say, as we round up the hour here, I have covered over a dozen wars. America, you do not want a war on your shores. You may think you do,
right?
You don't. The ramifications of actual warfare is nothing that we want to have anything to be a part of. It's just wars are a terrible thing, and we don't want them on our shores. So, no political violence.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and just full stop. Just like and people are like, well, but nothing. All it does is open the gates for other people to try increasingly horrible stuff. So, and if you have the opportunity to be the bigger person in this situation, and all you've got to do is not use violent rhetoric at your point. Maybe you're not going to act on that violence, but the active thing that you could do to contribute, don't talk it up. Don't support it. When it happens, simply say it's wrong and move on. There are plenty of other things to talk about, focus on, enforce. As far as votes on things and anyways, we're at the end of the show. I want to remind everybody, On the Edge, Philip's show is on Sundays. New episode tomorrow. Please check it out and subscribe to the channel. Johnny Million will be on right after us. So I'm going to hang out for a second, and then as he jumps on there, I will raid over to him and let him take it away. I'm going to be at the No Kings rally here in Las Vegas later this afternoon after I go to soundcheck for Nerd Halen, which we're performing tonight. Free no-cover show here in Vegas at the Sunset Station Casino. So we'll see you guys there if you're in town. It's going to be lovely, but hot. So be safe, and thank you guys so much. Take care of yourselves, and take care of somebody else. And thank you guys for helping us meet our super chat goal. That was very lovely. We're going to raid Johnny Million after this. Yeah, it's really sweet of you guys. And,
I'm going to go pee before my stream.
I don't need to know that. And,
I'm going to stream before my stream.
Isn't that
a contradiction in terms of? I think that
that
sounds
redundant?
impossible. There's something.
I think it's all going to help. It's all going to help.
I think you're wrong. All right, bug out, Johnny Million, and
All right,
I'll let
good
you
to
go
see you guys.
too. Yeah, I'll let you go too, Phil.
All right, guys.
So thank
Catch
you
you
so
later.
much. All right, cheers. And I'm going to go back to me, and they're both gone, so I'm alone again without you. So I'm going to hang out with you guys for a moment as Johnny gets his show ready and bring up a couple of things. And thank you guys so much for the support on YouTube and on Twitch. Lovely folks. Our tip jar has actually got stuff in it now. It used to be so sad. Poll results. So far, we still got time. We got 391 people can still vote. We got plenty of time on the poll. Money is ahead, 56-44 over P-tape. Yeah. Please, I need to Marshall. Please, yeah. Take care. So, okay, let's address this elephant dans la rue in the street. I gotta say, if you're out marching and someone is committing violence, please get them arrested. And here's why. The quicker these people that are just there to cause trouble and cause violence get arrested, the more power the marches have. This idea that that rioters should be bailed out quickly, or they're fighting the good fight or some shit like that, when in reality, all they're doing is endangering the lives of everybody who is marching, who is peacefully marching. So the sooner these people get wrapped up, and the more, let the cops be busy, processing these folks and leaving the real marchers aside, because it undermines the message of the march when people are violent. So fuck them. If they came down there to start trouble, they're not for the cause, period. Because that violence is, I would argue that this is why self-defense is justified, is that is a violence that is, in the moment, seeks to solve the problem. A person is seeking to harm me directly right now. I must stop them from doing that, or from directly harming someone else physically in my presence. That's the only time I think physical force is justified. Myself, if you think you're going to throw a bottle and end the National Guard being someplace, or overt military force, or stop the raids by throwing stuff, you're wrong. It will actually do the opposite. So, and I think most people know that by now. So if people are down there and they're throwing shit, I'm going to assume largely that they're actually on the side of all this violence and they want it ratcheted up. So the sooner they get arrested, pulled out of the crowd, and put in a holding cell so they can explain to their mom what they were doing this weekend, the better, so that the marches can go on, so the focus can be the message. Does that make sense to everybody? How's that fly? Does that make sense? Am I where the Marines? They're like a few dozen of them standing around federal buildings in Los Angeles. The guy that they detained was at the Wilshire Federal Building, which is not anywhere near downtown. It's over in the west side of the city. It's super far away. So that was silly. Makes sense. It's the actors in black. Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, if the right is like, everybody's wearing a mask as a Fed, we're like, okay, we'll say the same thing. Use that. They're all Feds. Use their language against them. Thank you, Charles. Too many think jail is a badge of honor. Well, that's because they only stay in there for a short while. I would argue you should get real, jail time especially if you throw a Molotov cocktail. Like if you throw something incendiary, throwing a bottle of water, which could be something bad. And again, there's one thing that you have to understand about these circumstances and why they act so heavily on what people are throwing. Let's see, what's a good example that I can give? If I had the simple example is that somebody's holding something in their hand. I wish I know I have a one around there somewhere. I've got to. It's in the other room probably. Okay, first time the person runs up to the line, they throw a rock. Boom. Second time they run up, they throw a rock. Boom. Third time they run up, they throw a grenade. That's how these things happen. That's when people in battle situations and in fights like this, they test the line. This is why people get shot for throwing rocks in Gaza, besides the fact that there are IDF soldiers that are awful. But this is why they get away with it and stuff. Because the third thing, or the next thing they throw could be an incendiary device, could be a bomb. And if you're just going, these are just rocks, this is just a rock, boom. That's how people get killed. It happens all over the world all the time. So that's how training happens. So when military, and this is why you don't want the Marines down there. So when cops do this, cops are trained, these are civilians, and more than likely they're not going to throw a grenade at you. Military guys are trained that, look, the third thing they throw at you is going to be a grenade. They're testing you to see if you'll stand still. Okay? Cops are taught, it's more than likely the worst you can have is a Molotov cocktail, and we've got to have protection against that, but we can see it coming. You can see it on fire, but the idea that they're going to throw a grenade is very low. So rocks, whatever, just stand there, hold the line. That's why there's a difference between military personnel on site for a riot and cops on site for a riot. That's why it's important. That's why there's a distinction between the training. Because if you train a military guy like a cop, he'll stand there and get blown to bits in a war zone. Does that make sense? If you're trained to be military and you're standing there and you're holding a line at some sort of unrest that's happening and you're protecting an embassy or something like that, the third thing that comes could be a grenade because you're in a war zone. And so that's where your head is at. And so your response will be, the next thing that somebody throws at me could be a fucking bomb, and you're going to be keyed up to shoot. Whereas police officers are trained for just the opposite, civilian situations. Where and that most of the stuff that people throw, you can see it coming. I should have a parade of cats. It's not a bad idea. Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to make sure that I got to jump over here to Twitch and make sure I see when Johnny goes live. Jump over here to Twitch and make sure I see when Johnny goes live. Hey, it's me talking. Listen to that. Hold on. Hey, it's me talking. Listen to that. Oh, sorry. Hey, it's me talking. Listen to that. I see. That's why. Because the Safari isn't... Yeah, there we go. Hold on. Wake up, you silly thing. Okay, good. There's, log in. There we go. Okay, quickly. Authenticator app. Authenticating. Authenticator app. Remember this device for hurry up. Damn it. I was too slow. What the heck? I'm doing it. Hold on. Use SMS instead, you weirdo. Okay. Quest code. There we go. All right, now we're in. Thank God. Good. Go ahead.
Oh, it must be in
Stop playing game, people in the background eating a sandwich while they're watching Elden Ring. I don't know what the hell people do on these stations. They make millions of dollars. As soon as this whole Trump thing is over, I'm just going to eat sandwiches on Twitch and watch other people play video games because apparently it's a growth industry. I'm kidding. Twitch isn't going to be there. Hassan is going to destroy the entire thing before it ever has a chance to get off the ground. We're following Johnny Million. We'll make sure. There he is. Is he tuning right now? I think so. He's got 9 people in there. We're going to send a raid over to Johnny Million because we love him. Even though he's blurry right now. I'm not going to hold that against him. But he is playing guitar all blurry. Can you not tell that he's blurry? Does it not matter that you're blurry? Do people look better blurry? Maybe it's just psychedelic. Something like that. Can you write a tune for protesters? Give peace a chance. It's too catchy and easy. Yes. No, okay. Okay, got it. Raid. And here we go. There's Johnny Million. Woo! Johnny Million. Oh. Look at that. Johnny Million's got some graphics. Hold on, I'll put this aside. Oh, chat. There we go. Wait, I have to watch a commercial? Oh, no. That's just... Here's Johnny Million live, ladies and gentlemen. But this is Johnny Million's follow graphic that comes up. And he's got the emote wall up. And a Venmo. Look at that. Johnny's got his Venmo up. He's learning. Yay.
Come on,
Headphones. Check. Johnny Million. I'm in your chat room. You can't hear me now because he's off the other thing. Oh, I'm hearing it 2 ways. And he's frozen. It's so far so good. I clearly worked too hard on my live stream. All right, I'm gonna let you guys go and enjoy Johnny as he does it. There you go. And thanks to everybody on Twitch. Go if you're not on Twitch, you can subscribe on Amazon Prime. It doesn't cost you a dime to one channel, and then you can.
Fuzzy indeed.
You're fuzzy. You can't hear me. I'm just talking to myself. All right. But that's Johnny playing. There he is. All right. Much love to you guys, chat room. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. And the poll with 498 votes. Money 56%. P-tape 44%. So you think it's monetary as opposed to sexual blackmail that Putin has on Trump. That's our. And by the way, do you guys like the polls as a thing? Should I do more of that? Oh, he's turned off his Snapchat filter. He's switching over. There he is. And he's got a green screen, which is a mistake. Hi. There he is, and he's moving himself. He's building the show on the fly like he does. There we go. Yay, Johnny Million. Okay. Much love to you guys. I will see you later. I've got so much to do today. And again, Nerd Halen tonight at the Sunset Station Casino. Outside, no cover show. It's going to be a good time. Much love. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. And I think this will do it. It will. Look at that. feel like I should put Johnny Million's music on behind me as the outro music. Yeah, that's what I'll do. Hold on. If he's playing at all. Do we hear it? No? Just me? Oh, I see. I gotta play him. There we go. Everybody tell Johnny his jam track should be slightly louder. His guitar sounds great.
You're happy, he's glad to see, Slappy's happy to see you guys too.
Look at those scalloped frets. Okay, I'll let you guys go. Bye.